Good evening, everyone. I'd like to reconvene the open session of the Coventry School Committee at 7 o'clock. If we could all stand, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you could remain standing for a moment of silence as we consider the work before us this evening. You may be seated. And Mr. Florio, if you could honor us by reading the mission statement for Coventry Public Schools, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Coventry Public Schools, with community partnerships, educate, inspire, and motivate students to be lifelong learners.
And Mr. Levis, if you could do the safety notification for the public, please.
Sure. In case of an emergency, there are exits behind you. Go out either exit, and you can exit to the left or right out to the outdoors.
Thank you. And just to report out to the public, the school committee met in executive session for about a half hour. We discussed matters related to a potential litigation, and we approved our homeschool request in the minutes of our executive session on 10/10/19. The votes on our homeschool requests and our executive session minutes were unanimous and carried by 3-0. Moving on, that being said, can I have a motion to seal the minutes of the executive session?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make motion that the records of the executive session be kept closed pursuant to sections 42-46-4 and 42-46-5. And Mrs. Coolian was there for most of the vote. So that's it, Madam Chair.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 4-0. Moving on to approval of our minutes that were in our packet, which was reference number 1, our open meeting of 10/24/19. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the minutes of the open meeting of October 24, 2019 as presented / amended.
I second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 4-0. Moving on to personnel, classified resignation. Mr. Levis, did you want to speak to any of these?
Sure. Just on the resignation of Mr. Whitaker. Jim Whitaker has been a custodian in the district since 1998. He always took great pride in his job and always went above and beyond. He has been the head custodian at Coventry High School for many years, in addition to leading the maintenance staff at Coventry High School. He also drove a plow truck and helped to keep the Coventry High School parking clear and safe for students and staff. He'll be greatly missed by all. Congratulations, Mr. Whitaker, on your retirement.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the resignation of Jim Whitaker, 8-hour/day head custodian at Coventry High School, effective October 31, 2019, for the purpose of retirement.
I second the motion.
Any further questions from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 4-0. We extend our congratulations. Make sure Jim knows that. Thanks. Moving on to classified appointments. Is there a motion to appoint Justine Hellman?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to affirm the recommendation of the superintendent to appoint Justine Hellman, 4-hour/day teacher assistant, intensive support life skills at Coventry High School, effective November 11, 2019.
I second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 4-0. Moving on to the appointment of Bonnie Briard. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to affirm the recommendation of the superintendent to appoint Bonnie Briard, 8-hour/day head custodian at Coventry High School, retroactive to November 4, 2019.
I second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 4-0. Moving on to the public agenda, for those of you present in the public, any of the agenda items till the end of the meeting are now open for discussion or questions from the citizens gathered. If a motion is made before we actually vote on that motion, we will bring it out to the public and then have the call for the vote. That being said, we are going to move on to number 7, which is a celebration of the Rhode Island Quiz Bowl contestants and coaches. Mr. Levis.
It's me. So I'd like to just briefly say this is the second year, I believe, that Coventry has participated in the Rhode Island Quiz Bowl. This is the first year that the high school team is going to be competing. They're actually going to be competing Saturday, and you'll find out the results sometime in, was it May, I believe? April, close. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to, and I think it's important to know we have 4 of the 5 students here with family members, and we're going to bring them up in a minute and recognize them. But I think I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge, and I'd ask them to come up, Miss Bowden and Mrs. Aronakis. Mrs. Bowden, if you don't mind coming up just for a minute, please. I see you sitting in the back there. I know you're probably grading because grades are due tomorrow, but appreciate it if you guys would come. Not to put you on the spot. And I just want to say that, pardon? Just call us right out. I did. I believe I did. No. I want to thank you, and I want the committee and the community to know that this is not some small task. This is completely voluntary. The work that's being put in it by the students. In fact, don't forget, you guys have to do your homework, go online and watch those videos in those last 3 years, right? But these guys have been working so hard, and I just want to acknowledge that Ms. Aronakis and Ms. Bowden and the moral support. Ms. Maycumber has been there, isn't here tonight, but they've done a phenomenal job. And again, this isn't something that we have to do, but we're competing against the Barringtons, the LaSalle, Hendricken Classical. So it's a great feat. But I just want to recognize that, we often hear, we'll be starting budget season, but these are the things that our people do. And I think it's so important. I just wanted to thank you guys. And we have, if you don't mind, I'd like to identify, there's one person that's not here, Bernice Lee. But I'd like to acknowledge, if you guys could come up front, I'll just go by this way. So Zachary Hammer, Evan Hammer, and Liam Cohen, and Nevin McCallum. So these guys have been, like today they were studying, they were practicing, they had buzzers. Miss Aronakis bought, I don't know where you got them, must have been, a dollar store, I assume. But the buzzers. But they were doing competition. Miss Bowden and Mrs. Aronakis were asking questions. So these guys have been putting a lot, and these are some of our top students. So I would assume you put a lot into work every single day. So to go above and beyond is just amazing, and we appreciate that. So I just have some certificates to give you guys. So just want to say congratulations, Liam. Thank you. We're celebrating now because when we win, you wouldn't know till, like I said, April, right? The fact that you can come Evan, April's a long time to wait, isn't it? Thank you very much. Evan. Thank you, Evan. No, I know who he is. I was looking at Bernice. I know you're not Bernice. Exactly. Thank you very much. So I don't know if you want to go up there and get a picture of them, or.
Yeah, come on.
I want you up, and then you
Come
guys
on.
can,
Come up on the little platform, and then you get to shake our hands, too.
stand up there. You want to,
We'll hide.
Pretend you're happy.
So we have some great Coventry shirts that they'll be wearing Saturday.
Oh, cool.
Nice long polos with a nice, bright red Coventry.
Nice, nice.
Black pants, remember?
Yeah.
So if you guys want to just.
Yeah, don't go run away yet.
Start this one.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Coventry.
Just want to thank
Look, man, you guys gonna win.
Congratulations. See you guys.
Go on for the win. Come on. You guys can do it. Thank you.
Have fun Saturday.
So before we go back out to the public, Dave, did you want to say anything?
Thank you. And do as best you can. And we appreciate it. And thank you for representing our town. Thank you so much.
Mr. Murray?
I just think this is great. You guys are spending your own time doing stuff to represent Coventry, and I appreciate it. No matter how you do, you're winners, and we're proud of you. So thank you. And I just want to give a shout out to Donna and Kelly for putting in their time on this. It's much appreciated on our side. Thank you.
Donna?
Great job. It takes a lot to really do what you're doing and, you know, get out there and do everything that, besides doing your schoolwork, doing all of this extra. And, you know, and I know Kelly and Donna they're awesome and they're probably the best coaches. So good luck. I know you do well.
And finally, for me, just want to congratulate you for this first round win. And I have no doubt that you're going to win on Saturday, and that you'll be back in front of us. And we're just really, really, really proud of you. Great job. And also to your coaches that have spent the extra time with you, and your parents, of course, that have encouraged you as well. So the community is very happy that you've achieved this wonderful honor, and we're hoping. I'm not going to wish you luck, because you don't need luck, because you're going to win. So
I just want to, just a little, I hope Miss Aronakis doesn't mind me sharing this, but if you do, it's too late. But so Miss Aronakis, when the team found out that they were going to go forward with the tournament, that we're one of just 8 teams going to be in the tournament, I think we ended up, I say we because, well, you guys, but I am the superintendent, so
he gets to take credit.
Yes, no, but we're scored like right in the middle of the pack, which is phenomenal. So Miss Aronakis had to go to a meeting with all the coaches, and it was like, I think it was last Tuesday night, and so this person came over to Miss Aronakis, and they were from one of the private parochial schools, and said, and I'm paraphrasing here, but says, dear, probably I think she referred to you as dear. It doesn't really matter the points, but it what, and I'm paraphrasing here, but just matters how that you made it. And if anybody knows Miss Aronakis and knows how competitive she is, right? So that was those were fighting words for Miss Aronakis, right? And she said, no matter what, right, we have to win on Saturday.
Very condescending and said, I know it's your first time here, but don't worry, it's not about the points. Just make sure the kids have fun. I will say that she was a nun.
I was- So I use the softer version of this,
Yeah,
right?
obviously.
Anyways, but I just think this is what Coventry's about, right? Just the fact that we can come together and there's a focus and we can laugh about it, but it's serious, right? And it shows off, it's again another recognition for the wonderful work that everybody does. So again, I just want to thank you guys. I really appreciate you coming out here. I appreciate the parents, and we'll see you Saturday. Thank you very much.
I do have one question. So I've never witnessed a quiz bowl, really. I mean, I don't know what they do. So is this across all areas that you need to know, right? So it's like, wow.
Yes. There's 10-ish different categories, so it covers like literature, art, science, math, history, pop culture, sports. Wow.
And do you get to kind of confer with the team, or do you just go 1, 2, they go in order?
First round, which was a couple weeks ago,
Yeah.
we were able to kind of, we had 5 seconds to kind of talk to each other.
Yeah.
But the one that's going to be televised, we have buzzers, so we have to buzz in, and then whoever buzzes in, you're not allowed to confer with each other. You just have to hopefully get it right.
So is this going to be on live TV that we can watch or not? Oh, but not, so then you can see it after? Yeah, make sure we know what station and when.
They can't say anything, so if we win, when we win, They can't say anything. You'll find out in April because they're
Okay.
gonna
Yeah,
sign
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
sworn to secrecy, right?
So if I may, it's Hendrick
Yeah.
and we're up against on Saturday. We're
Yeah.
correct? So once Hendricken goes down on Saturday, the poor guys have to spend their entire Sunday at PBS as well, because we go right from there to the finals. We will play the winner of Barrington v. Lincoln, which will probably be Barrington, and then for the finals. So when they win tomorrow, they have to go back on Sunday.
Wow.
And then they're sworn to secrecy about whether or not we beat Hendricken or not, whether or not we beat Barrington or not, or classical or Pope, whoever they put us against.
Okay.
And that will be televised in April. So
Okay.
we're not allowed to tell you what happens until April.
All right. Well, go team.
So that's why we're celebrating tonight because
Yeah, okay.
April's a long time.
It is a
and-
long time away. So
Smiles on our faces.
I know. Any comments from the citizens gathered? Does anybody want to say anything? Okay. So the next thing is that you guys can go home if you want. I'm sure you need to go home and study up and also do your own homework that you have for tomorrow anyway. So thank you so much for coming. We're honored by your presence.
Good luck.
Woo-hoo! Okay. Moving on celebration's fun. They're just really great. They make our job worthwhile. So moving on to number 8, which is the school discussion of the student-operated motor vehicle on school property policy. It was our reference number 3. This is our first reading. Mr. Levis, did you want to?
Sure. So this came before the policy subcommittee a few meetings ago. Well, we went through the high school handbook and we wanted to make sure that the policy was aligned. And we noticed that, you'll know in bold, I added number 19. And that's in the high school handbook. Ms. Maycumber, we shared this with her. So what we want to do is just to align the policy with our practice and what's been approved in the handbook. So Mr. Anderson obviously is part of this, so we wanted to bring it forward to the committee. I can read it. It says, if students drive to school while their parking privilege is suspended, their car may be towed at the owner's expense. The same is true for students parking on school grounds without a current parking pass. So, again, it's in the handbook that every high school parent reads and reviews, but it wasn't in our policy, so we wanted to.
Cool. Not at this time.
No, ma'am.
All right. Are we ready to move to dispense with the first reading?
Madam Chair, I move to dispense with the first reading of the student-operated motor vehicles on school property policy, EEAAA, as presented / amended.
I second the motion.
Okay. Were there any comments from the citizens gathered? Any questions? Seeing none and seeing none from our committee, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 4-0. And I just have, if James was here, I would be giving this to him, but just a couple of edit things. It doesn't change the content.
Okay.
It's just some, didn't seem awkward to me in reading it.
Sure.
Moving on to number 8.
Number 9, Madam Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, number 9. You are correct, Mr. Florio. Discussion of search of student property. And again, this is a first reading of this policy. It was our reference number 4. I'm sure we all had a chance to read it. Mr.
Sure.
Levis, do you
It's,
wanna-
we made one addition. So this ties into the whole conversation about vaping and THC and the concerns that have been brought forward. I had mentioned at the last meeting or last couple of meetings how we were going to go out and purchase these handheld metal detectors. I know there's been posts on Facebook but the bottom line is that we're going to make sure that kids feel safe, that they can go into bathrooms. It's not everybody that's vaping, not everybody that's potentially using or, as was presented, selling THC, but we want to make it very difficult for individuals to conduct that. One of the things that we talked about was using metal handheld detectors. It's used right now in Charahoe. They're used sometimes at dances. There's training that has to be involved. We wanted to make sure, though, that we had language in our policy that supported that, and also ensured that it described how this would be done. For instance, and I'll read the language. So it's one piece of language we put in the policy. It says building administrators or designated persons are authorized to use a handheld metal detector when they either, one, have a reasonable suspicion that a student has contraband, or two, search all students present in a location. So right now, if somebody goes into the bathroom and there's 20 kids in there, they're probably not searching everybody. We're trying to probably get kids out of the bathroom. This is different than the days with tobacco and smoking, right? It's a lot different. It's easy to, we're being told kids are doing it. Kids are telling us they're doing it in class. Parents are telling us that their kids are doing it in class, but there's certain techniques where you can't even determine this. So if we go in a bathroom now, we see 20 kids in there, they could use the handheld metal detector as long as they search every single student, right? So we don't want to set up any discrimination. There'll need to be training around this, but again, our attorney has been over this, Mr. Anderson, and we're definitely serious about this. There was a Lauren Cohen, who was here last time, who's the student assistance counselor, had students in all the advisories write little teeny trees about, just about why drug-free and substance-free is important. And I was reading, there's probably hundreds of them up on this tree right in the main hallway outside of, between guidance and the main office. And I saw a couple there about how, student says, this doesn't pertain to me, but we definitely have to do something about it. So this is one step. We talked about having dogs come in periodically. And I'll show you what it looks like. We purchased 4 of these, right? And we'll train people, but this is our world today, and we're going to do what we need to do. Assuming that the committee, this is just the first reading. We'll ask when this policy gets approved, I will ask the police to train staff. And again, we want to make sure we're not setting kids up. But for all those students that complain about not being able to use the bathroom, having to go home, wait till they go home, we're going to take a stand. And the other part too is that, if students have substances that are wrapped in tinfoil, this can detect it. It'll detect the vape pens because they have metal components in them. And, like I said, I can't stop somebody that's addicted. I know that this isn't going to stop them, but it can stop them from doing it in school. It can make it more difficult for students. And there'll be a percentage of kids that will stop just because they don't want to get caught, most likely. Usually an intervention has an impact on a percentage. I don't know what the statistics are, but we're very serious about this, and I want people to know, parents to know that we are very serious. And it's no different than the caution we take like in a snowstorm. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? But always going to err on the side of caution. Well, third person in Massachusetts died yesterday from vaping and THC combination. So, we would be negligent. I would be negligent. I think the committee would be negligent. I'm not a lawyer. I think this community would be negligent if we don't take these steps. So, again, this is what we'll be using. This is what the policy covers so that it's communicating to the community, to students, to parents. This is what steps we will take and how we'll do it. So, and we'll have to go back and operationally define, make sure that our administrators, deans, if they're part of this, know what reasonable suspicion is. We'll make sure that we have Mr. Anderson come in so we're all on the same page. But this is where we're like I said, we purchased 4 of these. We have the chargers. They'll be at the high school. And, I'm hoping by December 1st that this is our, unfortunately, it's our reality. So, but.
Any questions for Mr. Levis from the committee? On the policy or whatever? Did you have something? Luke? Oh, Dave, did you have anything?
I understand the need for it to get done, Mr. Levis. I understand that completely. I'm just kind of conflicted about the pat-down policy and the patting kids down. But that said, I know you have to do this. I know it needs to be done. It's just sad that it needs to be done. That's all I can say. And we have to save lives. So I agree, Mr. Levis, but I don't vote for this. I vote for this with a heavy heart. That's all I have to say. Thank you, Mr. Levis.
Mr. Murray?
So I was gonna say something to this effect, but really, I think what I get out of this is some parents are gonna be happy that this is implemented because it is a problem. Some are gonna push back on this, and we're gonna get some calls. I would say it's less invasive than doing the pat downs and the actual physical searches. So I would say that going in this direction would actually help prevent some of those invasive sort of searches. That said, this is the world we live in, and I think as a school committee, my personal opinion is that, from my stance, I want to back the administration in saying this is a problem, it's a known problem, we need to be on board with this, and when the policy is implemented, we need to continue to be on board with it at all levels. So that means when it goes bad, or I don't say go bad, when it gets implemented, and a parent calls because they're not happy about this, that the administrators know at the building level we have their back. And I think that's important to convey, because by passing this policy, if we should pass it as a unanimous group, or a majority anyway, that we have your back, and we know it's for the right reasons, and we know you have to implement this policy at the building level, because this is the reality of the world we live in, not because of what we want. And we know that vaping is an issue, it's a spiraling issue, and if we can get ahead of it, then hopefully one day we won't need this device. I'd be more than glad to get rid of the policy on searches, but the reality of our world is this stuff gets into our schools. We don't want it there. It's unacceptable. So, and the only other thing I was gonna add as a constructive, we talked about training, and I do think that's important, is the only thing I would personally like to see and just suggest is that trained building administrators or designated trained personnel. We can deal with the actual training policy internally, but from a policy standpoint, I'd like to actually put that in writing from the building committee level so that we know that it's not just any building, they have to go through that training going forward. So, all right. And I know this is only a first reading, but it's just a suggestion.
Yep, that's a good suggestion.
I certainly agree with this. Not even just for the vaping pens, unfortunately, we have to worry about weapons being brought into school, and, this could help with both of them. But again, as Luke said, it's a real problem, and we have to let parents know that we have your back, and that, we're listening and doing the appropriate things. And, I know we'll probably get calls, but hey, that's the way it goes. This is what we've decided, and this is, as a group, we've decided to implement this. So I totally agree with the administration here.
Yeah, I agree with all of the comments so far. We can't fly on a plane today without going through all kinds of security. I think it's a proactive step that we need to take, and I think our students, for the most part, will understand that it's for their own safety, and I'm very hopeful parents will agree. And I think it's a policy that we had to institute, quite honestly. So I'm certainly in support of this, 100%. So is there a motion to dispense with the second reading? The first reading, sorry.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to dispense with the first reading of the search of students, student property policy, parentheses, JIH, as presented / amended.
I second the motion.
And before we take the vote, is there anyone in the audience that would like to, Mr. Chase?
I just wanted to add that,
If you could come to the microphone and just say who you are, so people can hear you at home.
Tim Chase, I'm an assistant principal of high school. I just wanted to add that on Wednesday night at 6 p.m. at
I'll be
Coventry
there.
High School,
It's on my calendar.
we will have a presentation from a gentleman from the U.S. Attorney's Office on the dangers of vaping, and it'll cover the traditional Juul nicotine type vaping all the way through THC. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there about the relative safety of vaping, and also about what that device may look like, and I think a lot of parents, it will open their eyes to not only how dangerous it really is, although it's portrayed a certain way by the marketing people from Juul, and that it's not for kids, it was designed for adults to help stop smoking and all the other BS that they gave us for years, as well as kind of the devices and the way they look and the new things that are being created all the time. So so I think it's gonna be very informative and useful. He's spoken to our kids before, but we really encourage them. We'd like to see a lot of parents there from the middle school and high school in particular there. So Wednesday night at 6 o'clock in the high school. It's gonna be a great building.
Great, thank you so much for that, to remind us all. Hopefully the word gets out. I know I've seen it on listservs from the high school and from the middle school too, so. Anybody else? Okay.
Can I just add one thing, is that this policy is not new. We're adding that
No, I
one
know,
section,
yeah.
just for the public to understand that. And there is no pat down in here. We do search, but we're not having our administrators pat down. It's basically, you have the student empty their pockets and, yeah, so we would, you know, that's not something that we do. Right, I just know, I just want to be clear, we're not telling administrators to go up and pat people down.
I read
you
it.
know?
I read the whole thing. That's what I was like.
Okay,
Thank you,
All
Mr.
right.
Levis.
All
you're
in-
welcome.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it, motion carries 4-0. And even though we passed it last time, I guess I didn't read it as carefully as I should have, because I do have some edits in the material that was already passed. So, it doesn't make sense, these things. So
Okay,
do you
yeah, that's
just
fine.
Put them
That's
on.
great. Yep.
And maybe I did before, and I just didn't get done. I don't know.
Maybe.
Because I usually just pass the edits down to James, you know,
I don't remember.
so I don't either. Go back and look.
That's okay.
Moving on to discussion and approval of a food service management agreement renewal. Is that you, Sarah? It was our reference number 5, I believe.
In your packet is the food service renewal. This is an annual template that's issued by RIDE. So RIDE did take a look at this. Usually these are approved in May, so you'll see that in the packet. But due to ongoing negotiations with our food service company, this was delayed, and RIDE is well aware of that. I've had some very good conversations with them. So the budget is not favorable for us. If you look at the very end, we're projecting quite a significant deficit. And as of right now, we have proposals to split that deficit with Sodexo. We will be looking at alternative options. We really have no choice. We're hoping that we've put in a lot of different changes this school year, such as the food truck at the high school, trying to do things to drive sales, trying to use some of the equipment at the middle school to improve marketing. The regional director has been on site on a weekly basis, as well as marketing and the food nutritionist, to try and help educate why we have to serve the whole grains and comply with the nutritional requirements. But it is a challenge when you have kids that can leave and go down the street for a couple of dollars and get a Big Mac. So we are doing our best. We've put in for grants for additional breakfast carts at the middle school. We've been trying to focus on driving breakfast there. We were doing well when we could have the breakfast carts outside. We're struggling a little bit more now that it's inside. So we will continue to monitor this. I will be meeting with the school lunch company on a monthly basis. We'll be meeting with their employees coming up soon. We are doing some different initiatives where we will be pulling together on November 12th some representatives from, I believe we're starting at the high school, to just talk about some of the things that they're seeing to try and improve it. The biggest hurdle that we have is one, making sure that we're encouraging kids to eat and that they want to eat, even our free and reduced, but we definitely have a struggle with the labor costs. And that is a union contract, that's a national contract, and none of the food service vendors have been successful in renegotiating that. So that is something that we need to keep aware of, and we'll do the best we can to work through that. But as of right now, it does look like we will end another year with a significant deficit.
So are there any questions for Sarah? Mr. Florio?
Sarah, great work, as always. What I find, I read the whole thing, but what I found interesting is that they also have lobbyists that go to Washington, D.C. And, yeah, it's, they can afford lobbyists, but they can't Well, anyways, I found that extremely interesting, and I just wanted to share that with you. It's too bad we can't get Chatway, is that one?
Chartwell's is a state vendor now, so if we decided not to go out to bid again next year, and we were not satisfied with the results from Sodexo, we could switch to Chartwell's. But I do just want to remind you that the history is, we've gone through Sodexo and Chartwell's and Aramark,
Okay.
and every single one has run a deficit. So, and especially post the Rhode Island nutrition requirements, which came into place in 2009, that's when everybody pretty much took a turn for the worse. And there is definitely money. I think all of these companies have lobbyists. Some of it is necessary, though. I think there's a difference between wanting kids to have healthy meals and wanting kids to have meals. You know, and I think it's a fine balance between the regulations that are set and then how you implement them. I can say that we've gone out to schools even to figure out how we can balance the nutritional requirements with kids that may have sensitivities to certain foods,
Peanuts.
or, you know, concerns about taking everything on that plate, and we've been trying to come up with alternatives. But it's hard knowing that every kid has to take a fruit and vegetable, and they should have that, but that also leads to food waste if that's not being eaten. So it's just this fine balance. So I actually think that we need more people going to Washington to say, yes, we want a healthier America, but we also, it's a fine line, you know, between making it operational and successful in schools.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Murray?
I know you've been working on this for a while, and it's a tireless effort. So, and just for the public's edification, you know, I know one of the strategies is try to improve the quality, try to improve the service, try to just improve, right? And I think that's the only way we've kind of looked at it to get out of this, because there's things like we can't control the labor cost, which is, we can go down to Washington and we can try to do that, but we can barely get the legislature in Rhode Island to move on most things, right? So, not saying it's not possible, but it's probably unlikely at this point. So I know you're trying this effort for the community's benefit. You know, there's a deficit, obviously, and that's going to impact budget and everything else we do. But this is the realities of the world we live in, right? There's mandates and everything else that the school has, school district has, that the town doesn't, right? We get told what to do. And while well-intended policies they are, they lead to issues. And usually the issue is money. So, has they done a student survey of the quality of food and what their perspective is?
So they've done some
Focus
little
groups.
ones, but that's the goal, is to do focus groups by school. So I know that I've seen talk at the middle school. I know we're going out to the high school. We struggle at the elementary school, but it's a little bit different because, and I know we have an elementary principal here. So there is some pickiness, but at elementary level, we've seen relatively consistent numbers, you know, and as those children get used to eating whole grains and taking fruits and vegetables and progress through, that will shift, hopefully, over time. But our biggest concerns, sales-wise, is definitely at the middle school and high school, which is why we did the food truck. We were supposed to do it twice. We got rained out once. It was very well received at the high school. So, and that's a truck that is in Providence a lot, but we don't believe that they're going to be using it as much. So we will have it here as much as the high school team will allow us to have it here in the spring, because I think it gave the kids an opportunity to get outside. It's still all eligible meals, but it just changed it enough to promote a little excitement. I know the middle school would like to do it, but they're not set up as well from a layout perspective to have it there.
That's a good point, because that's a tough cafeteria there to do any outside it. So
It's really a library that was turned into a cafeteria.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
to
But this is right. Building layout affects how we can operate. We can't increase the traffic because we don't have the opportunity to increase the traffic, right? So that's a good kind of lead in on that. But that's really all I have. I know you're doing great efforts. Hopefully the food trucks, I can see those being successful. Anything to get the kids outside and excited about. You know, it's not just about eating, it's about the experience. Not surprised that kids prefer burgers and French fries. I do too. But it's important that obviously we have nutrition in the schools. We've seen where that goes too when you have Taco Bell in high school. So thanks for your efforts.
I I think they can have a burger and still get the whole grains in there, because I do it. But, yeah. But anyway, I know you've been working hard. We've had discussions about that deficit and how it's not just us. It's, world, actually countrywide from, from what the things I've read and everything. But, you're doing your best, and we understand that, and thanks. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for all your hard work, and certainly, I know we've had deficits right along from day one since I've been on committee, and that's 17 years, so it's a tough market. It's a very tough market to try to break even, so. But thank you so much for all your efforts.
Can I just say, just one thing is that, well, a couple of things. One is that this has been, since Sarah's been here, it's been ongoing and looking. And I think right now there's been some changes with Sodexo. They have a new district manager. That's Kristen Morello. She's been phenomenal. Just a lot of energy. And I think that's, putting everything aside, that's kind of what we're going with. We'll be meeting, I think you said that, like next Tuesday. They're going to serve lunch to some, whatever high school teachers are available, but to really get their honest opinion about it, because, I go into schools and, at least at the middle school and the high school, I haven't heard much from the teachers at the elementary schools, but at the middle school and the high school, they're very vocal about some of the changes, especially at the high school. So we want to sit down. They're open to that and see. But we also have other things that we're looking at. So this is kind of our first way to approach this. But there's other ideas that Sarah's looked at that, because we can't continue. The bottom line is we can't continue to run a deficit. It can't just be the way we operate, and there are some variables. But we feel that we don't have the opportunity. So if we have a disagreement, or if we have an issue, like we did last year, I can work with Linda Bellamere, I can work with Kelly and have that. We don't even have the opportunity to do that here. And so that's something. And, we know that the bottom line is, to the big companies, Chartwell, Sodexo, Aramark, what happens in little old Rhode Island really doesn't matter, because they deal with these individuals throughout the country. And this has been shared more than once with us. So right now, our approach is to go full forward with this and try to improve the quality and increase sales. But if it doesn't work, we can't just, become victims of this system. We know we have to take some other action, and we've already have some ideas. So I just want you to know, the committee to know, that we're fully on board with Sodexo to try to make it work this year. But there are other things that we have talked about that, because we can't continue to do this. It just can't operate. We need more people in schools, and we need to do what we can. So I just wanted to share that. But we're not going to talk about that. Like, that wouldn't be even fair for us to get into. But I just want you to know, in terms of what Sarah's been doing, there's also looking at what ifs, and that's important to know.
Okay, thank you. Are we ready to motion?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Sorry, one last thing. Are we doing, just through the superintendent, I guess, are we looking at other schools? Has Sodexo, I guess, had any success in Rhode Island where they say, we're not running deficits and this is why? Like, I guess that would be my only ask. And I know you're looking at this, and probably looking at other systems, but.
Right, so I think all of the vendors have had successes in some districts and not. I had them at Pontiac, and they were fantastic, even through a building project when I didn't have kitchen equipment, because we had to put that out of the project for a little while. So I have the utmost respect for the team at Sodexo. By far the best working relationship that I've had out of the vendors that we've dealt with. I think some of the battles that I had last year. So yes, they have had successes, but there are also a lot of schools that are running into the same situation. The number of schools that have a union in their school lunch is not very many. I want to say there's only six in Rhode Island. So some of those are faring better than others. We're on the worst side of the school districts, where we have a unionized school lunch labor market, and that's really no knock on the union itself. It's more the structure, as Mr. Levis had mentioned. The union contract's not with us, so we're not at the negotiating table. We have no ability to advocate for the best interests of Coventry as a whole, nor if there are issues, do we get to be involved in those issues. So that makes it difficult when you're responsible for a program that you have no control, really, over what happens in it. So, but I think throughout the state, you've had some successful and some areas. I know Pawtucket always runs a deficit, but we are not Pawtucket. And I also don't want to accept a deficit as a normal operating procedure, especially when we've had to hemorrhage our school operating side, which is supposed to be our core mission. So I think that's where the struggle is. And as Mr. Levis said, this is not something that we can accept, even if it has been history. You know, we'll do the best we can to correct that going forward.
Thank you. I like that attitude because I don't think taxpayers want to accept it either. I think we have to show that we're trying to, but they also have to express that sometimes we have our hands tied, and some of this isn't our call either. So, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Are we ready to motion on this?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I vote to approve the food service management agreement renewal as presented / amended.
I second the motion.
Any further questions or comments from the committee? Anything from the public? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 4-0. Moving on to number 11, which is the registration gateway program discussion, centralized. And that's Mrs. Andrews.
So as all of you know, our current registration process is such that if you have a student a child in the 2nd grade, a child in the 6th grade, a child in the 9th grade, you have to go to 3 different locations in the district to register your children for school. So I'm always looking at systems and efficiencies and trying to maximize the use of the limited amount of resources that we have available to us. And so I've sort of been watching the registration process for the last couple of years. Because we have 3 different locations, that also creates opportunities for inconsistencies in the process, just naturally. That just naturally happens. So we began to explore what our options were. We looked at other communities that are the same size as us, bigger than us, and it became clear that most communities our size and bigger have a central registration. So we began to explore that. And in that exploration, we also began to have discussions about our student information system, Aspen, and the data that we are putting in to that system through the registration process, and the data that we can then get out, both as it relates to reports that we may need as central office administrators or building principals may need at the building level, and certainly data that Patty needs as the data manager for state reporting. And it became obvious that based on the fact that we have multiple sites of registration and something as simple as putting an address into the system, if you write Avenue, AVE, or AV, it will mess up your data extraction and you will not get correct data out of that system if you are querying. We had a family who had a fire. We knew there were children in that home. We tried to query the system with that address and couldn't come up with anything. So we are not maximizing the systems that we're paying very good money for.
Exactly.
Because our
Data entry.
registration system is not maximized. So, in taking all of that into account, we found this program, Registration Gateway. Patty and I spent about half a day in Cranston. They utilized this program. They were very generous with their time. And it became clear that this online registration program for families in a centralized location would be much easier for kids and families. It will clean up our data, both input and extraction. Our student information system will be maximized. And so that's the decision that we made. We're going to go with a centralized registration process. It'll be at Flat River. The city of Cranston has one registration clerk for the entire city. So we will have the two data clerks that we currently have. They will be fully trained. Before we moved to this system, Patty and I met with the registration clerk at the middle school, the registration clerk at the high school, the ladies on Flat River. We met with the special ed administrators. We met with the nurses. We met with guidance counselors. We met with Jim. We met with the athletic director. We tried to touch every constituent that would have a piece of this registration process, so that we made sure that the data and the information that they need through the registration process gets answered in this system that is being built for us right now by Registration Gateway. So you have a packet in your
Yep.
excuse me, in your folder. That is not exactly what our registration process is going to look like, because we are building ours customized to Coventry. There are places in these sheets where it asks for like medical information. We are not going to do that. Parents will be able to upload documents. If they're unable to do that, they can bring the hard copies. At the end of the process, any and all hard copies of things that they need, like birth certificates, residency documents, maybe transcripts, they can either upload or they can bring with them. The system allows us to have control of a calendar that will have scheduled appointments with a registration clerk at central office. We will control the time slots so that we'll be able to manage the personnel in the office in a much more efficient and better way. And parents will be able to bring those documents with them at that time.
They'll actually have will be computers, so if they don't have the ability to do that at home,
They
will
could
be
do
able
it here
to
if
come
they
in and do
wanted
it in the office.
Right,
That
we
makes
will
sense.
have a number of machines available for parents that don't have access to technology at home. So they'll be able to come in, go through it's very easy, step-by-step process. They'll be able to register all their children all at once. Once they register one child, when they go to do the next child, the program knows that it's a family relative, and so all of those kids will be connected. Right now, if I'm looking for a sibling of a child, I can't pull that data out of our information system. The information that we will get will be much better for administration around looking at programs, supports, where kids are, how our resources are being utilized. The other piece to this program is at the beginning of the year, as parents, you know those grades great back-to-school packet you get with 9 million forms, and things you have to sign, and you won't get those anymore. It will be an electronic sign-off on policies, handbooks, emergency contacts updates, addresses, not addresses, sorry. They will have to come in to do a change of address so that we can confirm continued residency. But phone numbers they'll be able to change. So all of that will be done at the beginning of the year electronically. Those nighttime kindergarten registration meetings that we have all over the city with lots of personnel, those won't exist any longer. Kindergarten parents will be able to go in as of March 1st and register their children online, right from either their living room, their breakfast table, or they can come into Flat River and use one of our machines, and we'll be there to help them. So that's kind of the really big picture. I can walk you through every page. I don't think that's necessary.
A question, so they register, but what about scheduling, right? So like at the middle school and the high school, the scheduling's still gonna have to be done.
Absolutely. There are questions in this process about, is your child interested in a sport? They say yes. The athletic director will automatically get an email immediately. There's a section about, does your child have special education services or needs? You check yes. The special ed department will get an email immediately. There is a registration happening right now that you need to be aware of, so they will be able to go in. It cuts down on the time between relaying of information from the registration point to the person that needs to do something about that to 0. It is immediate. Now, that person has to respond to that notification, but they get notified immediately. So if it's a high school student, they need a schedule, guidance will get notified immediately that that registration has been completed and they need to schedule that student.
So does this do away with the little yellow cards that you used to get and fill out every single year?
Yes.
You know, oh, that's,
No, it doesn't.
they are?
No, they will not be used. It'll all be online.
But they still have to fill them out online.
Oh, online,
You're not
but-
gonna get that little yellow card. It's all gonna be online. All that emergency contact stuff will be online.
I used to have, oh.
It will be online, not digital.
Who has the permanent record? Where does that stay? Central office, or does it go to the school?
No, it'll go to the school. So if the parent doesn't have the records and they sign, the releases will be there as part of the process for the parent to sign. The release will send the records to the school, not to central office, so that you'll get it quicker. Yeah, you'll get it quicker. We don't want it to come to central office and then we have to just send it to you. That doesn't make a lot of sense. So we'll send it direct.
So basically, if, correct me if I'm wrong, I have 2 children, I fill out information for one child and say, you know, emergency contacts, all of that, that'll automatically upload to my second child?
Yes, you can change it if you want to, but it will automatically load with your second child. The other thing is parent portal and access to the system. You'll be able to do that. We will assign one login automatically through this process if the parent says, excuse me. If the parent says yes, you will get, you'll get that login, one per family. That way, we don't have to worry about multiple logins for multiple members of families.
This is great. I gotta say, I like this.
There will be bumps. No, there will be bumps. But we're gonna, you know, we're gonna clearly be very involved. Jim and Patty and I meet with our registration gateway via the computer. computer at least 2 or 3 times a week. They're very, very involved.
I think that we still have to make sure that we accommodate, 'cause not everybody has a computer. We'll have to accommodate, we have issues now with sometimes with transportation, people want to come in and register and they have struggles with transportation. So these are things that we're still gonna have to work out, to make sure that we can get, support families, get them in and hopefully the people that are doing some of the registration, we're doing it at different places, there'll be more time to do other things because it's this will make it more efficient, but we have people in the buildings working that are doing multiple things and hopefully they'll be able to focus on I think things that'll be more important with less opportunity for error. And the other part too is about the Aspen. We spend a lot of money in Aspen, we all know that. We need to maximize that to benefit our teachers, to benefit our students and our families. And hopefully this, one of the issues, I believe, this, in terms of getting that information to Aspen. So that was crucial too when we looked at that because, we like I said, we spend a lot of money, but it has a lot of capability, but we haven't maximized that. And so even though that's not the agenda item tonight, we're still going that path too. There's meetings going on. Patty's been working. So the whole idea is to make that the work that people are doing much more efficient so that other details that we need to focus on, because everybody says, you hear the thing about we're top heavy and we have too many staff here, and we all know there's not a building I go in where we couldn't use more staff to do something, right? And we're hoping that this will make it more efficient across the board and allow people to do, because if you look at the job descriptions, I can give Linda, but Barbara, I'll look at what she does, right? And there's so many different things. This will hopefully help focus on more of a priority in terms of the registration piece, and so that we, with the same amount of people, we can do more. That's what we're hoping. And again, so it's a win for parents, it's a win for us, it's a win for data. That's what we're hoping with this. I'm sure there'll be hurdles because there always are, but it should be better for everybody.
Mr. Florio, did you have any questions for Mrs. Andrews?
Just a statement, Madam Chair. Thank you, Lori. You made my life a lot easier. I will not receive calls from as many parents as I used to.
You might.
I might, but we're on the way there, and they don't have all that information to fill out, and every year, and done great work. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Levis, as well. It's a big deal. It truly is. And parents appreciate it, I'm sure.
Mr. Murray? Anything?
I'm always, you said 2 key words, systems and efficiency. I'm always about systems and efficiency, right? Anytime we can maximize something and reduce redundancy, all in favor. I get it. And with that, I appreciate the fact that you went out to the administration, you went to the buildings, you covered your bases, you looked at Cranston's system, you borrowed as opposed to inventing. I always say if you can steal a good idea, why invent one, right? So couple quick questions. One is I'm assuming this is going to be accessible through our main website. Is that correct? So you'll click on a link, it'll take you to the portal, and you'll fill out your information. You'll log in, fill out your information. Great. So it'll be a centralized, very easy to navigate. Hoping our website eventually gets a little nicer. That's an aside. Beta testing. So we don't maybe have a huge rollout. Like, are you gonna pick a small pool and try it before you roll the whole thing to the district? Because if it goes sideways with these things. Okay.
We're going to start with kindergarten in March.
Okay.
And then we will do all new registrations starting in the summer and next year. Everybody else is already in the system and will roll in it. So it will just be new registrations through the summer and our kindergartners in March.
Okay, so we'll have a chance with our kindergartners to iron out some of the details and the kinks that are inevitably going to come up with the system, right?
Correct.
So we won't
I think
get.
we're actually in a really good place for there to not be as many kinks as you think there might be, because there are 4 districts using it in the state of Rhode Island, and all 4 of them are Aspen districts. So they have already worked out a number of issues with the other districts and our student information system. It's really about making sure that the way that it is built is aligned perfectly to what we need and what we have for fields in the student information system.
Right, as they say, garbage in, garbage out, right?
Correct.
So if we don't put in the information correctly, we won't get it out correctly. All right, so that's great, and you answered one of my questions, which was the integration with Aspen. So that information automatically dumps into Aspen.
Immediately, once that file's been closed, it goes right in.
Okay, I'm surprised Aspen doesn't have a portal like this up front, you know, like, but pay a lot for the software, you'd think it would have something.
They want you to pay more.
Yeah, of course, always, right? Which leads me to the other thing, is cost of the system, because obviously budget.
I'm trying to pull it up now,
No,
actually, 'cause I knew that was gonna
Begged
come up.
Yeah.
Sarah for the money and.
And it's not that I'm focused on money. I get the effort, but we are the school committee. We're in charge of the budget, and you know, and cost benefits important. You know, looking at this.
Probably haven't opened it, so I will, if
Okay.
you give me, I will, before this meeting's over, I will pull up the exact cost for you though.
I believe you. So
We purchased the cheapest version that they had.
yeah, and listen, if it helps maximize our administration, I agree with the superintendent. Like, if we can, it's not about necessarily reducing personnel, because I know, contrary to popular opinion, we're maxed out, right? You go into the schools, our mission. So the idea of focusing our existing personnel on priorities, I think, is a great one. But I'm always obviously, you know, I'm a taxpayer too. I want to make sure that the taxpayers know that this is a measure to save them money, not to just cost them money. But everything comes with a cost. And then I had one, what was my last thing? Oh, I was just going to say, as far as the forms and whatnot, so the state a few years ago came out with e-permitting for the building permits. And it was a tough turn of events. You know, towns were required to put everything online. And we have a portal station at City Hall that people can come in and use, because you'd be surprised at how many contractors don't know how to use a computer, right? But it works, and this type of system will be a transition, but I think it'll work even for those parents who maybe, and we have a library, right? Public library, anybody can log into. So I think that was my question about the being able to access through a common web portal, because any public location, cafe, anywhere, they can really do it now. So I think it's accessible, and there's ways around that. So, but as long as we have those options available at the building level, I think that's good.
Okay, so we've
Get it?
found the invoice. So it is $10,650. They are part of a purchasing collaborative, so I'll look that up next. But we also know that they're the only system that will integrate with Aspen. So that's why the other districts in the state went with them, because they needed that collaboration with Aspen.
And I'm going to assume you did research on what the other districts are paying. We're in line with that? Okay.
And we're starting later in the year too. So this was later than starting, for a July 1st enrollment as well.
Okay. All right, and does this integrate at all with because I know there was the messenger system, am I getting that right, Don? So I know that there was an issue with if you don't have the data in Aspen correctly, or you're populating that data, you can't contact the people if you don't have the right number, right? So this is, I guess, linked into that effort?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
All right, so now we have good data, now we can make the call, we can make the contacts, Aspen's up to date.
There's a field that says, do you want to put your number in? So, yes, it will
Okay.
be connected.
Which is important because we're also spending some money on that program, so we don't want to maximize every program we have.
Correct.
All right, that is it. Thank you.
Anything else from you, Don?
I think you got it all.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. A couple of questions. So I don't, obviously I haven't seen the system, and so I don't know, but you did say about uploading maybe birth certificates or something like that, or any other data, documents that are needed. So how have the other cities and towns that are using this, how have they, or have they had any trouble with someone doctoring, and how do you know? Because if you upload it and it's scanned, it's not really the original that you're looking at, so.
Yes, we've had that conversation. And
Yeah.
what will happen is they will upload it
Yeah,
if they choose to.
yeah, they don't have to, right?
If they choose to upload it, a clerk has to go in and certify certain areas.
Okay,
So they have to eyeball that. Yes, you said you uploaded the birth certificate. I see a birth certificate.
mm-hmm,
Okay. Once they have certified all the areas that they have to time.
Yep.
They close that out. The parent is instructed to bring all those documents to their appointment
Oh, okay.
so that the registration clerk can eyeball them
All
to
right.
ensure they
I was
have
wondering.
not been falsified.
Doctored in any way. Okay, I get it. So every parent does originally on a kid have to bring original hard copies,
They have to come in and
even though
make an
they've already
appointment.
put all this.
It'll
They
take about
have to.
No more than
I
15
see.
minutes,
Yep.
but they will have to come in.
Cool. And so also, obviously, there's the whole notion of, will they be, like you said, there's maybe checkoffs, like, so they're going to be putting their emails in. They may not want to hear from us or be on a listserv. Because obviously, not every parent signs up for the listservs in the different schools. I don't know what the compliance is or how many people actually do that. So I guess my question is, when you download the information, will there be restrictions on what you can do with that? And will there be like parents that you have to check and say, yes, you can use my email for communicating with the principal, the school, whatever?
We did not go into that level
Yeah.
of detail.
Yeah,
The FERPA, district
Yep.
FERPA statement and policy is in there.
Yeah.
All of the legal requirements.
Sure.
Migration, migrant education,
Yeah.
all of those things that legally we have to, ask, but we did not get to the level of detail around things like that for
Okay.
using people's email.
okay.
It
And so it'll still have to be like the individual building principal to kind of have outreach to make a listserv. I get it.
They can opt out by not providing the email.
They don't have to put it in.
No, they don't have to, but it's really nice
We have
that,
a lot of parents that don't have an email. and
Right.
they
well, yeah.
just want to avoid, one family email.
Oh, yeah,
I
okay.
think they can just naturally opt out by not.
Oh,
providing
okay.
it.
Oh, so they don't
There
have
will
to.
don't wanna
always
get a message.
be a place on the school web pages where the parent can opt out of the list.
Of something.
Right?
Yeah, they
So-
can. I know they can. Yeah, yeah.
So if they
All right.
opt in and they decide, you people are bugging me, I don't wanna get any more information from you, they can go and opt out, just like they can.
And then finally, I assume that only certain people, like maybe building principals, or who could go in and actually look at a family record?
The registration clerk,
Yes.
and it will be determined who at the building will, it depends on, it depends on what section, like if it's a high school special education,
Yeah.
Brad will tell me who he wants to have
Okay.
access
I
to
got it.
those records.
So it'll
If
be
it's a high school, it will be Donna Bowden will have access to those, because she'll need to make sure that the schedule
Mhm.
gets built.
Right.
For those kids. So we'll work with the building principals, and with the special ed director to make sure that, those records and those emails and notifications get sent to the people that have a need to know.
okay. Sounds wonderful, actually.
There are kinks that have to be worked out. Like, for
Yeah.
instance, in like special education, communication, and there may be certain things that have to go from one, because we have a different system. We have TyNet that does all of our special education and our records, and so we'll have to look. There's a lot of different communication things that we'll have to look out of, because the law might say certain things need to be here. And like I said, this talks to Aspen well. But I think people that have a right to have an access to it, it'll be the same as it is now. The people that have a right, it's how they'll have access. It'll be different. It'll be more electronic. So, and the other thing is about, we have to think about just with, like in terms of cybersecurity and all that, and people may be concerned about, you talking about cyber cafes, but I know I've been told by our, the company we work with, like Jay Longley and Envision, maybe not to go to a library to do documents and things like that, right? So, but I think the key on our end is we have to be willing to do whatever it takes. So I know I was I'm at central office. I saw a family talking about registration, and the clerks, they were phenomenal, but they came in without the stuff, and like I heard them speaking in the hallway about how hard it was for them just to get there. And so we have to be thinking about all that, so we still have to accommodate people. But this, in the bottom line, this should make things a lot easier, a lot more efficient. And we've had, a lot of issues, right, with Aspen and information, and it'll be nice to. Yeah, it'll be nice just to have the right, and nobody's fault. Like I said, we have people multitasking, doing 50 million things, doing a registration while there's phones being answered. We're hoping to streamline this, to make things a lot easier and a lot more efficient. Because you're right, like you said, there's things that have been done for the past, and why they were done. A lot of times people say, well, we couldn't afford to do this, so this is why we did it. But when you look at what's being done, it's not efficient, and we're spending human capital. That's probably not the best way we're doing it. So at the end of the day, this isn't about, like you said, this isn't about eliminating jobs at all, but allowing people to do, if you prioritize 5 or 6 tasks, we're hoping that people can get to their top 2 or 3 tasks, and this will take care of the rest of that. So
To me, it's a great step in the right direction. So thank you so much for this work.
Madam Chair?
Yep.
Can I also thank Mrs. Martin for the work that she completed on this? Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Martin, as well.
Cool. All right. Was there anything from the public on this particular issue? Any questions? All right, thank you. Moving on to the Finance Director's report. Exactly.
So we are just, I'm just trying to get back to my report here. We are still struggling with certain nuances. 19 is closing out pretty well from a software perspective. The auditors are in this week. So at the next school committee, although next school committee's budget workshops for the following one, I'll give an update as where I think we're gonna land with 19. I just want them to get through a bulk of their work to make sure that there's no adjustments that I haven't already accounted for. As far as FY20 goes, we're still struggling on the HR and payroll side. And it's, I think, more of a software issue. And as you know, the software is sunsetting June 30th. And I think the issues that we have been experiencing, Jim, you can jump in, seem to be more on their end, just really strange things happening, things not saving, when we roll over balances. It wiped out my entire FY20 balance. So I don't know if it's on their end because they're basically winding down, but it's been a struggle. So as of right now, we only have one payroll that is in the restored database. The rest of the payrolls from all over the summer are sitting in this lifeboat, which is what we call it now. And so we've been having some issues getting that merged back in, and it's a lot of just crosswalking data. We had thought that when we were going through those summer payrolls, we were flagging them so that changes could go through. But the ladies in HR and payroll, they've entered job fair changes 4 and 5 times into the software. So it's still just a time-consuming thing. They're trying to run the salaries for FY21 budget projections. Some people are pulling, some people are not pulling. And then we have to go back and really reallocate through the grants. So when you look at the budget to actual, like that salary and benefits line, we've paid significantly more than what you see. I think it's like 32,000 in health or something like that. But we just don't have it in the system that we're reporting out of yet. So we will get there. And as I said to the auditors, I'm not really concerned about 19 closing out. I'm really scared about 20 closing out because we have a lot of work to do from a cleanup perspective. On the plus side, the way that the salaries shook out, we did see a little bit of an offset with some of the hirings that we've done. We still have some vacant positions that we're accounting for, so that could fluctuate depending on who we ultimately end up hiring. The biggest hang up in this is right now I have the assumption that all of our additional costs with Envision are going to be covered by insurance. So at this point, that's where I want to stand until the insurance company comes back and says, nope, sorry. We have had to purchase some additional equipment in order to be able to handle some of this. We've obviously had them on consulting for some significant time, both helping us get back to running normal, which we're still trying to get back to normal, and on their forensic side. So we have every belief that those costs should be covered. But that could change once we hear back from the insurance company. Solar, we are moving forward with the solar bids. We did go out to bid both for the consultant and the virtual net metering. We had, I believe, 10 bids for the virtual net metering and 3 for the financial consultants. All of that will be coming forward to you, but we need to interview. We're doing that on November 25th, the 3 financial consultants. Once that's selected, we'll bring that firm forward to you for approval. Once that's approved, then we'll go back to the virtual net metering. And the financial consultant will assist us in making the selections. And then before anything goes forward, again, we'll come back to you on that. 3-year projections that was brought up at the last meeting. Those are in your packet as well. I hate to say that I'm putting out numbers that are somewhat arbitrary, but I really am. It was my best estimate for 3 years, not knowing what state aid's going to be. We're going to have 2 new contract cycles. We're talking about what we could potentially do for healthcare. I'm hoping no matter what that we don't experience an increase like we did last year, because I feel like we have trued up to where we should have been for the past couple of years. So that was sent to the town manager. I think I did it on October 31st, so we hit that November 1st deadline, so that's in the clear. And we'll refine those as best as we can as we go through the process. We will get preliminary state aid numbers for next year as around November 15th. That'll still be on last year's student enrollment, and then again, we won't get the final number until the spring, but we'll just kind of keep plugging along with it. So that's a quick overview, if there's any questions.
Mr. Florio, anything for Sarah?
Nothing, Madam Chair. I think she did an excellent job at prognostication.
Prognostication. Great word. Mr. Yeah.
Thank you. I know it's a tough environment right now. It's helpful to have the projections, even though they're not based, I guess, in reality, so to speak, but at least knows what it's going to help me digest things as we look out for the few years, because one thing we know, we have a cap on the tax limit. Right. So we have to kind of, a lot of times, unfortunately, it's not always setting priorities based on the need. It's setting, your budget based on what you can actually do. So it's helpful. Thank you for pursuing the solar effort to the whole administration. I'm hopeful that it'll turn into something useful for the budget and for the district. So, and I also want to reemphasize with the community that it's a green effort. It's a money-saving effort, and it's another way that the school district is approaching hearing the community coming out of the last year, that we're trying to innovate and do things to save funds and try to make the district sustainable. We are doing what we can on all sides. As we go into that, we'll reiterate that going forward, is that we're looking at all aspects of the budget, balanced with student need and what we need to operate. So this solar effort is about that entirely. And I think in the end, it's a good feel-good move, but in the end, it's also a budgetary move. So good luck with the financial software. And I guess that leads me to my last, I know there was RFIs put out. Have there been RFPs put out, and have we gotten any responses for the financial software packages?
So there was an RFI put out, then there was an RFP put out. Bids came in. We did vendor demos with several of the vendors. In full disclosure, I was pretty adamant that I wasn't going with any vendor that didn't have Rhode Island school experience because of the UCO and MTP. We did see one vendor that does not currently have any Rhode Island schools, but I strongly believe that they were capable to handle it. They went fairly deep in how their account structure would be set up. Then additional information has recently come to the surface at Power School, who currently owns SunGuard or Phoenix, our software. Did not submit a bid the first time around because they thought it was only for the town. And now they have provided estimates. So there is talk about issuing a second RFP. with bids due December 1st and a decision made by December 9th. I've been fairly vocal that I am concerned about that. My view was that an RFI and an RFP was issued, which gave adequate time. I also asked if, because they're our existing vendor, if we could not entertain that, and I asked both John and Nick was on the email to see if he could weigh in on that. There was a significant cost savings from the Power School model. I have no idea what that looks like because they didn't respond. I am significantly concerned about the timeline. When this first discussion took place, we had said we wanted this really up and running by February, March, because we will need to run concurrent databases to make sure that the new database is capturing the same information as this old database, which is questionable at best right now. But we need to have something running. Also, given the timeline as to when an implementation will be taking place, that's hot in the middle of budget season, school construction. The school has the most employees, I think the most unique issues from a payroll human resource perspective, and also will have the most number of employees to be trained. So the new timeline would put like at a January 1st start for an implementation. I know the vendor that we had looked at before said if we signed by November 30th, it was a 5-month implementation period. But any software change of this magnitude is going to be difficult and time consuming. So I really don't want to issue a second RFP. I understand the reasons why, but I was really hoping that the solicitors would come around and say, because they're your existing vendor, you know, you can entertain switching platforms, or they had 2 opportunities already to respond. But again, it's not, my big concern is the timeline. And no matter what, a software change is gonna be a significant dollar amount. But I think it's so crucial to how we operate. And we are living through an insufficient software now, and what we have to do to work around, whether it be running Google Sheets for building restricted at the elementary school levels, running QuickBook files that is not an online QuickBooks file. So for me to look at a file, I have to go to the school or ask for reports. I mean, it's just, as you heard in the last presentation, our goal is to start working smarter and not harder. And I'm a little concerned about the process.
No, I share your concern. I look at it as it's a $70 million organization, right? So what would you expect of that organization? They'd have the software to do what they need to do. Is the town's obviously driving this process to go back out. Are they picking up the tab for the software?
So let me I just want to jump in quickly, is that, you know, I think Sarah was very eloquent and held back a little bit in terms of the concern. I'm extremely concerned. I think it's catastrophic if we go back out. I think the software we have now is failing. That's how I look at it. It's not even labor intensive. We can't figure out. We don't believe that it has anything to do with what had transpired. It's just these people have been terminated that work for Phoenix. They no longer have a job, and obviously this software isn't a priority. My big concern with Power School is where were they? Where have they been? If I bought a company out and I had contracts and I was going to come up with another product or have another product, I would be marketing them and saying, hey, we don't want to lose you. None of that's taking place.
What is driving the decision to go back up? Because I'm assuming they complied with the town.
It's
complied
money.
With
It's
bid
it's
law,
about
correct?
money. It's about money.
So
and
once again, we're into like
Well,
maybe not what's
so just-
maybe not what's
but
best,
just-
but it's about chasing. The
But just in
dollar.
fairness, there's been dialogue, even today, there's been back and forth, and we have the utmost respect for working with the municipal side with Mr. Arnett and Mr. Wazika, but so our conversations, we're trying about changing the past, because like I use this cliche, I try to take the high road, because when people especially start pressuring about certain things, I have to bite my tongue, because things have been going on in this community. Poor choices have been made for years, and we've come in and we're cleaning them up, right? And not once have we come and started pointing the finger. This is another poor decision, and like the decision that has to be made financially, like we talk about facilities and we talk about whatever we do is going to be for many, many years and for the future. Well, this financial decision is going to be for many, many years. And So we need to make a right decision, a quick decision. There's been ample time. And so the way I leave this hanging is I don't want to go out to bid. I want to see what Mr. Anderson and Mr. Gorham say about Sarah's question. Do we have to, if this is a great product, and we don't know that, we don't know what the product is. I think to me that excuse that, oh, we didn't know it was we thought it was just for the municipal side, then read. If you read the document, right, you would see that it was for both of us.
Right. And even beyond that, they gave us, this was last February, they gave us notice that this would be sunsetting June 30th, 2020. So they notified us. They could have at that point in time put an effort in to say, we're closing this, we have this option available
Right.
for
So-
you.
Right.
And then we
They
issued
never
an
do.
RFI
Right.
and an RFP. So
And I
the
get it, this
cost-
happens all the time. I mean,
Right.
taking away all the contractors, everything else, it's not personal, it's
Right,
business,
no.
right? It goes out through a public process. You follow the process and you either submit, you don't submit. If you come in and if it's bids due at 11 o'clock, I've seen people come in at 11:01 and they're rejected.
Right.
Not to cut off our nose to spite our face, but what I'm hearing is we had qualified bidders, we had multiple bidders. It wasn't one, right? So, and you've done RFIs, you've done RFPs, both of which weren't responded to. So I guess my basic question is the reason the city's driving the process that they're paying the bill on this, or we're going to be expected to pay on the bill on this on the side? Because if we're paying the bill, then me personally as a committee member, I have a problem with them driving the entire process, because I agree, we're driving the bulk of the budget. And it's important that we be able to track it. We have the most personnel, we have myriad of contracts. So if, in my thought process, we should be driving this, not the town. So I guess that basic question is, are they paying the bill and that's why they're driving the process?
So I would say it's been implied that that is the case, because for them to bill us, I'm going to put it in the budget and turn around and bill the town, and we have absolutely no choice. It's not like we're just choosing to go out. So that has been the implied message, but I have requested meetings because this was supposed to be approved at the last town council meeting, and luckily that was postponed, because that was my specific question, is that I want to make sure this is ironed out, because if they were going to go a direction that I didn't feel was in the best interest of the school, knowing our nuances, and I have to be clear, you don't even realize the nuances until you're in it. Like, I never could have thought that a school payroll is as complicated as it is until you get into it. But there were certain software vendors that I said, if that was the direction we were gonna go, I would have come back to you and said, sorry, we have to find something else because they cannot accommodate us. And I would have looked to some of the other software platforms that some of the other school districts have jumped to. So I think the issue, from a financial perspective, is the driver for the town looking to go back out to bid, because an estimate for a data migration is that was provided is less than what a lot of the bids had come back at, and so it was looking to give that vendor an opportunity to respond.
But the reason, and you know this, the reason for our request for information is so you can evaluate the software prior to going out to bid. So you almost pre-qualify them. They didn't even get into the pre-qualification. So I know you know all this. I guess my question, and I'm not speaking for the committee, but like, what are our options? Because I know you're trying to tie the same software to the town, right? We have timeframes. We have an issue. We don't agree, right? And that's no disrespect to the council or the administration on the other side. We're allowed to disagree, but ultimately it becomes our problem. Right, we have a problem. So how do we fix it? So we either split on this,
Right.
and
Well,
we say we're going to go our own way, or
I think first things first, right now, I want to hear back from our attorney. And, he hadn't looked at tonight, so it wasn't, fair for me to put him on the spot, but I want to see what he and Mr. Gorham say. And then if they say that, we can just look at it because they're already a vendor, then we can make an educated decision. But to go out December and then drag this on, and I put that in writing to the town manager and to Mr. Arnett and John, our attorney, and Mr. Gorham, that, I use the word catastrophic because I just believe, you saw how much we struggled this summer just to make sure that we made payroll, right? It was ridiculous, and we've taken care of a lot of those issues. this software is not working for us. And we have a payroll of, X number of millions of dollars, and we can't afford not to have something that's working, and not to mention all the other components of it. So my feeling is I want to hear back from them, and then we'll make a decision. It's been more than implied to me in the conversations, and again, I respect them immensely that they're going to pay for this. And that's why we said we have like one bite at the apple here. We need to do it right for the future. None of us are going to be here forever, and make sure that we're not setting up people based on just a poor financial decision like we've been set up. That's how I feel. Decisions that our people made. And so first things first, let's see what John has to say about it, and then we'll go from there. But I don't, I'm not willing, again, Sarah's the expert here, but I'm not willing to say we're going to go out to December. I'm willing to push it, whatever that means, But again, it has nothing to do with not trusting or having any the respect or the confidence in Mr. Arnett and Mr. Wozniak. I have the utmost confidence, but we always hear about how we're the largest percentage of the tax dollar and all these things. Well, let's get something that's going to work and be efficient for us, right? So that we can look, the taxpayers, and I say, hey, this was the best decision, not only for today, but for the future, because we just have so many issues with a lot of our archaic software I don't know how long Phoenix has been around. We've had it for umpteen years. And,
I think they switched in '99.
right. And we have to be tied to the town just the way the payroll is, right? So whatever we do has to be tied to them. So
It has to talk. It has to at least be
right,
able to talk.
right. But that's why I say right now, I think the best.
I trust
course
that
of
you guys
action-
are talking. I'm sorry to hop on this issue, but I understand working for municipality, and I hope the public understands, like, zeros get missed, that you want to see a big budgetary impact. If we miscalculate our predictions on a budget, or the audit's wrong or anything like that, because our software isn't operational, we're not carrying those numbers, it's a big deal. And it's also a big deal on efficiency. We talk about efficiencies. You can see the inefficiencies now because our broken software. And I know you see it every day. It's a big deal because we don't have enough time to really do the data that these programs can do. So I ask about it because I think it's a paramount importance. I know it's dragging on, and I'm getting worried because I'm assuming you want to roll out near the fiscal year or somewhere in there so you have new numbers in the system.
Right.
For the following year for the audit. So backtracking, I know we're running out of time. So I hope the town's taking this seriously. I hope they're not just looking at the short-term numbers because it could cost us major money long-term. I hope they're hearing us, and if they're not, if there's anything that we can do.
I think they feel like they're doing due diligence. I mean, and I understand that. I don't know if they know how serious a situation it is for us. But what if this system completely fails? Next week, a week after, it's not. Things aren't getting better. And I think for a while there, we had a really good response from the people at Phoenix in fixing things. And, Sarah had go-to people. And that's not happening anymore to the same degree, my understanding. So, again, I have a lot of faith though in Mr. Anderson too, that he'll figure this out, at least that legal question. And then if it doesn't go that way, if it goes back to a bid, then that's a whole different scenario if they push that, But I think right now the best we can do is the position we've taken, right? And been very adamant about it, not just very passive. But again, I want to be clear that, we up until this point, and even including this point, we've worked very well with them. We have great communication. So, I'm going to be optimistic and assume that this is going to work out to the best for both the town and the school department in very near future. That's what I'm hoping.
So they have the best intent from the town, and I want to make sure that that's clear, that they're not intentionally trying to stall or delay, and they're aware of the timeline. I just think we are definitely a little bruised from what just happened this summer, and we know what it's like to try and operate with a system that's down. We call service every single day, both on the financial side and the HR payroll side. So to think of trying to even not be perfectly running past July 1st and not have anybody to call, not to mention we're a fiscal year, but from a tax perspective, we report on a calendar year. So we could get to July and not have everything migrated over from the old system to the new system, and then be scrambling again next year with W-2s and 1099s, making sure that that data is in alignment. So I think there's a slight difference in perspective right now. We issue almost 1,000 W-2s every single year, and I'm not sure exactly on the town side, but I bet it's at least half of that. So just the volume of work that we do. And again, we know what it's like to operate with a system that's not operating. And we just can't afford to do that. And I really think, not that this is only about the people and the work that's been done, but the HR and finance crew has been through a ringer, and Jim has been through a ringer this year trying to get that done. So to try and cram that all on a very small staff in a small period of time when we have a lot of other demands at that height of the season is a recipe for a not smooth ending to the story for us.
Catastrophe.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mrs. Colonian, did you have anything to say? I will remain hopeful that it all works, and that the best decision's made. So, thank you so much. Was there anything from the public for Sarah? Okay. Then let us move on to number 13, which is the planning board action on the changing zoning classification. Mr. Levitt.
Sure, I just wanted, this has to do with the,
Propane.
across the street, well, and not just the propane tank, I really think the whole rezoning, because we have buses there. And so I watched the planning board meeting. I just want to, so two things. One is that the planning board voted to approve the reclassification. And again, if I say the wrong thing, I'm sure Mr. Murray can correct me, because this is his wheelhouse. But it's going to go, it has been sent to the council. And what the council is going to do is what they're going to do is to vote for it to, I guess it has to go public in terms of public opinion, public hearing for reclassification. But at the same time, the bus company, the propane company will put in a special use permit. They'll prepare a special use permit. So the whole idea is that once it gets approved through the council, that the special use permit will go in, and then it'll allow us they're trying to change it to classification to, was it I-9? Industrial classification. There was a lot of conversation about this is industrial, they believe that should be industrial. So we're hoping that it'll go through the process. I've communicated this to the bus company because they're incurring additional costs for the wet fuel that's taking place, but they haven't passed those costs on to us. My feeling is if this works out, that they won't pass those costs on. I can't speak for them. They haven't said that to me, but I'm hoping that's what will happen. So the next phase is that the council will approve it to go out for this public hearing, and then hopefully they'll approve the classification, and we'll put in that special use. Actually, the bus company and the propane company will put that in, but it has to change because the buses, I don't believe buses should be parked in that zone. Again, that's something that, I don't play the victim card, but we were victims in that. I know that decision was made by people on the town side. It wasn't made on our end. So I'm just hoping this all works out. It's seems to be taking, a long time, but I appreciate Mr. Crossman, has been keeping me abreast in terms of what happens on that end in the process. And so, in fact, I haven't checked the agenda. It could be on the agenda for this coming town council meeting on the 12th. So that's just kind of the update. Again, it's in progress and in process. So I'm hoping that it all works out for us.
Any questions from the committee members? We're all good. Anything from the public on that? Okay, then I guess we can move on to 14, which is the letter of intent discussion and approval for the ride necessity for school construction. is our reference number 8. And Mr. Levis, did you want to take that?
I don't know, maybe I'll defer to Mr. Murray, since he's the building chair, if you don't mind. I don't want to put you on the spot, but.
So, for everyone here, and we've been working. We now have a building committee, so that's great. This is our second meeting we had before this meeting. It's gone well. We have a great team, so we're looking forward to a great process. We have started the community forums. Tonight's meeting, we approved the letter of intent, which is a great step in the right direction. The next step, hopefully, we get approved tonight. We'll go to council for their approval, and then we can get it in well ahead of time, which is always a good thing. So it's due January 15th. Hopefully, our goal is to get it in by the end of the month, which I think is a reality if everything goes well. But this just basically, it's mostly forms that RIDE requires, and it solidifies our intent to go forward with the RIDE process and look at the schools in total, come up with an action plan, and then present that plan to RIDE for hopeful future reimbursement should we decide to proceed with action. So I think it's a great thing. I think we're obviously, and I can't speak for the committee, but hopefully we're all on board with this. We have a great consultant, great team, and I'll just take the opportunity along these lines to encourage the community to engage. We've had 3 sessions so far, and I won't steal the superintendent's thunder on the community forums update, but just get engaged. That's all I have to say.
So the agenda item tonight is to, if there's any, I guess if there's any discussion or on the letter of intent.
Yeah, I'm
Or
going to
to-
ask
oh,
if
okay.
there was any. Before we motion, are there any questions on this letter of intent by the committee members?
No
All
questions.
right, are we ready to move on the acceptance of the letter?
Yes, we are, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I make a motion that the right necessity for school construction of intent be approved.
I second the motion.
And before we actually call for the vote, is there any question from our comments from the citizens gathered? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries 4-0. Okay, and then finally, the superintendent's report. I didn't mean finally.
You lost.
Yeah, well, I'm so,
You lost.
So, so anyways, school safety, I think we talked about it tonight. You know, in terms of what we're doing with the policy, and we also have a meeting coming up. Ms. Andrews and myself will be meeting. I think it's this coming Wednesday with the police and the EMA, just to look at the whole process about a comprehensive safety plan. I think our plans now they meet the requirement of law, and they cover, but we want to look at more comprehensive, like relocation areas and MOUs that we might have to have in case there was a quarantine at one of the schools, making sure we can have access to food and water for maybe Stop and Shop or Dave's, things like that. So we're going to meet on that. School Community Forum update, I don't really have any thunder. That we've had 3 so far. And we're hoping to encourage anybody to come to these, because especially, you know, we had the high school last night, but the middle school, if you have an elementary parent, your children will be going to the middle school. I think it's important to have your voice heard. Again, we've had, despite a light turnout, I think there's been some incredible dialogue, some great points. I encourage teachers, as many teachers as possible, to come, because you live in those schools every day. I was in the high school all day today, dying. I wasn't cold at all, but I was dying in most of the areas just because of the heat. And yet tomorrow, those places could be 48 degrees, you know, kind of like our office across the street here. So I would just encourage people to come and have a voice. And again, this is just part of the process. But I think the interactive activities is not a long presentation. There's a lot of interaction. And then the question and comments at the end, I think have been very informative, great dialogue to hear. So that's the part about community forums. You know, we kind of talked about the vaping discussion update. You know, we just want to this is about protecting all kids. And it's going to be a community effort. This is not just a school issue. I'm hoping that when we have this presentation next Wednesday night at 6 o'clock at the high school, we've invited predominantly middle school and high school parents, but anybody's welcome to come. I think kids are welcome. You know, I would encourage bringing middle school and high school kids. Last time we did this, it's Mr. David Neal, who works for the U.S. Attorney's Office, a former state trooper, incredible guy. We had 14 people there, 4 of them, 2 school committee members, 2 administrators, 10 parents. We need more people to get involved. You know, you go on Facebook, there's probably hundreds of people posting about it, but I want to see how many people show up. But we try to get the word out. And I understand it's night meetings. We all have stuff going on. I get that. But it's just imperative that we educate each other on this. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about is just next Wednesday morning, we are going to celebrate the grant that we received from the Behavioral Health Fund from the Rhode Island Foundation. I've invited all the council members, I invite school committee, I try to invite all of our politicians, elected officials. I've invited all the community partners, and I'll invite more people. We only have a capacity of 64, but it's a great way. You know, we received this grant back in April and May. Well, that if you know, you don't have to have a great memory to remember that was not a great time in Coventry history. You know, it wasn't a time to celebrate. So we're gonna celebrate this next Wednesday morning, and we have Mr. Steinberg, Neil Steinberg, who's the CEO president from the Rhode Island Foundation. He will be there to speak, and we'll have some community partners speaking. We're gonna have a vice president from Blue Cross Blue Shield there that'll speak, because they gave the $5 million, $1 million over each year for this fund. And we're going to have students there. I have the students, some of the students at the high school coming in, because it's all about kids. So it's a quick celebration, but I think it's important, again, for the community to recognize that we received $440,300 and some odd dollars to support this community in terms of understanding trauma and the impact that trauma has on not only children and families, but secondary trauma, adults that work with children who have been traumatized, and how that impacts working with a child that's been traumatized, how that all integrates, and trying to make our community healthy. We have an opportunity to be a community-wide, be one of the first communities around that's trauma-informed, and we know that this will make a huge difference. You know, experiencing adverse childhood experiences, they're indicators of people's suicide rates. You know, you have 2 experiences, could be divorce in your family, having somebody live with you that passes away. That the likelihood that that individual will use substances is so great. And so how we understand this and work together, and we're going to train every single individual that touches a child. So it isn't just a school. We'll train all of our municipal employees. We want to train our youth coaches over a 3-year period of time. And, you know, so anyways, that's going to take place Wednesday morning. So that's it.
Anything from the committee members for Mr. Levis? All good? Anything from the public on questions or concerns from Mr. Levis's report? Seeing none, we can move on to citizens' comments. Are there any citizens from the, are there any comments from the citizens gathered?
No, I don't need it. I'm good.
Good evening. I'm Jason. Jason Martin. I'm the facilities director. I just wanted to publicly recognize you accepted Jim Whitaker's retirement tonight. He's been here a long time, and he really gave everything he had to the district. And you know, near the end, he was in pain and he was hurt, and he was still working. So I just wanted to publicly thank him and recognize him. That was all.
Thank you so much for doing that. I couldn't agree more with you, Mr. Martin. Anything else? Seeing nothing? Then I guess we can schedule the next meeting. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that the next meeting of the school committee be scheduled for Thursday, November 21st, 2019 at 7 p.m. at Coventry Town Hall.
Second the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries 4-0. And is there a motion to adjourn? I have 8:55.
Madam Chair, I make a motion. No, Madam Chair, I make a motion that the meeting be adjourned at 8:55 PM.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. Thank you, everyone, for your attendance.